Hey everyone, CPO here, and I just want to do a quick video on renting a handgun in Maryland and what that requires. Because if you look at the Maryland law, the law states since October 1st, 2013, in order to purchase, rent, or receive a handgun, you have to have a handgun qualification license. And so I teach pistol courses, and as a matter of fact, I don't teach HQL courses alone, but I do teach an NRA basic pistol course that I include the relevant Maryland legal components that will satisfy the requirements for HQL training. So in the process of doing this course, I'm telling people you can't rent a handgun without having an HQL. And then later on, I recommend people like, hey, go rent a gun to figure out which kind you want to buy. The question comes up, do you need an HQL to rent a handgun at a range to try them out? A lot of the ranges around here have testing and evaluation guns or rentals that you can basically use there at the range. You do not need a handgun qualification license to rent a gun at a range. Well, the question is why, right? Because that flies directly in the face of what the law says. You need an HQL to purchase, rent, or receive. Well, for the purposes of the law, rent means leaving the premises with. So as long as you're renting the gun and using it on the premises, you're not really, according to the law, renting it. You're basically using it under supervision of the owner. So all that to say, you can go in Maryland to a variety of gun ranges that have rental options, and with a driver's license and a credit card, grab a gun and go shoot it at their range. As long as you don't leave the premises, you don't need an HQL yet. So if you're waiting for your HQL, or you haven't decided yet if you want a gun or not, or maybe you don't need an HQL, maybe you have a one of the exceptions to an HQL requirement, then you can go in and rent a gun no problem at a range as long as you don't leave the premises. So with that in mind, I did go rent a gun recently. Actually today, I just got back from the range because I wanted to try out a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 compact. I'll admit I've never shot one of those, and I've always been sort of fascinated. It's basically a direct competitor to the Glock 19. And I gotta say, I really liked it, actually. If I buy another gun soon, which I don't think I will, but you never know, I would highly consider maybe getting a Smith & Wesson M&P. So this is my current carry gun, right? It's a Glock 19, fairly heavily modified. I have a Bowie Tactical Concepts custom frame job with a grip reduction, and I'm running an RMR optic. So, and I have custom trigger work. So all things considered, I feel like the M&P 2.0 feels like this gun as far as how it feels in the hand. It's got the right grip angle for me, weight, balance, very good recoil management, and the trigger is a lot nicer. It's all stock gun. I think the stock trigger is much nicer than a Glock trigger, just my opinion. And I'm a Glock armor, so I'm kind of a Glock fanboy. I've owned Glocks for, 30 years. Anyway, I really liked it. Let's just say if I get one and I can put an RMR on, I would totally get an M&P 2.0 compact and rock that daily. So anyway, that was a sidebar conversation. So I rented that, and I wanted to find out because I teach this to students, I wanted to experience this process to make sure that I'm as accurate as I can be. So I went and rented a gun, driver's license, credit card, got a gun at a range. I won't say which range, not important. I will say I thought it was interesting that there was no request for, do you have any experience shooting? Have you ever shot a gun? Do you want to know how the gun works? It was literally like, I walked in and said, hey, and maybe it's because of how I presented myself, right? I probably presented myself as somebody who's knowledgeable on the topic, because I basically went in there, laid down my, my driver's license and a credit card and said, I want to rent an M&P 2.0, compact. And so I didn't go, I'd like to rent a gun to try and, I just So maybe that's why, but so I've given them the benefit of the doubt. But there was no like, this is the gun, this is how it works. It was literally like, you want an M&P 2.0, boom, it goes into a basket, and then that's it. I basically paid, and it's cheap. It's like, I forget what it was, 10 bucks, 12 bucks, 15 bucks, something like that, to rent the gun. And the only stipulation they had is you have to use their ammo. So I bought a box of 100 9mm cartridges and just shot those up in there. And yeah, it was really pretty easy. You prepay, pay for that and the lane, and then you're good to go. So that was the odd thing, that they didn't assess my ability to use the gun. So I just thought that was weird. And that explains a lot of the shooters I see at that range and how they handle and mishandle firearms, is because you could go in and just, you know, for the cost of a lunch at a fast food restaurant, basically pick out whatever gun you want and take it in and go shoot it. So with no experience at all. That only bothers me a little bit, more so. I'd like to train those people. Anyway, so another interesting point before I wrap this video up, there is a range in Maryland, an indoor range, who will not rent you a handgun if you're by yourself. I thought that was kind of interesting, so I wanted to bring it up. Again, I'm not going to name names, but if you live around here and you want to figure that out, it'd be pretty easy. The reason is they have a 2-person minimum rule for renting handguns, and it's basically the suicide prevention rule, and they do that. I don't know if they had a problem with somebody who went in, rented a gun, and then used it to commit suicide, or they just anticipate that problem, or they know of somebody who had that problem. It's not a law. It's just that range's policy. But you cannot go in and rent a gun by yourself. You have to have 2 people in your party minimum. And the reason when I asked was because we don't want somebody to come in and, you know, he basically said it's a suicide prevention rule. So I'm not going to put words into his mouth. And then I asked if there are any exceptions. Sometimes I like to ask if there are exceptions because I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I carry LEOSA credentials, retired law enforcement credentials, current certification, qualification credentials. I'm an NRA instructor. I'm a Maryland State Police instructor. So I think, you know, maybe there's an exception that, you know, if you meet one of these criteria, you can rent a gun. And he's like, nope, no exception. So that's where I was going to rent the gun the first time. And I didn't have a buddy with me, so I ended up having to go somewhere else. Anyway, thought that was interesting. Wrapping this up, you do not need a handgun qualification license in Maryland to rent a gun if it stays on premises, i.e. using it at the range. If you want to rent a gun to take somewhere else, and I don't know if ranges do that, to be honest with you, but if you want to do that, then you need an HQL, which to do that, you have to meet a training requirement or the exemptions thereof. And then you have to get fingerprinted, and there's a background check and all that stuff. If you're looking for training in Maryland, I do offer training that meets the requirements for handgun qualification license training. I also do training that meets requirements for Maryland wear and carry, our version of the concealed weapons permit, although concealment isn't necessarily a requirement for wear and carry, but that's a whole nother topic of discussion. But if you're interested in training, you can hit me up. Look me up at blasterkRAFT.com. You can see whatever the next training session I have. Right now I've got one scheduled next month, but I don't put them too far in advance because my schedule is so crazy. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.